Hello, Boston. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see everybody here. I was just telling the WBUR crew, I used to live in Boston. I actually, for a couple years, lived on Tremont and Mass Ave. So how many of you all actually live in Boston? Not Cambridge, Boston.
Okay. Is there like, what's the, never mind.
All right, well, thank you everybody who came in, and welcome to Make Me Smart live in Boston here at the City Stage at WBUR. Welcome everyone to the CitySpace.
Great to have you here. So, let's see. We're going to do a little housekeeping, then we'll do the pod, and then we'll do Heather, and it will be, honestly, I'm a history guy. Can't tell you how excited I am.
He's been
Truly.
so excited. Truly.
So excited. Anyway, so a couple of things. Number one, silence your cell phones, please. I know somebody probably already told you that. We're going to be recording this, so this will eventually show up on the podcast feed, just so you know. So if you want to hoot and holler, go ahead, but you will be heard by many hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe a million. We'll get it there. But if you're feeling it, clap, do whatever you want to do, because that's what this is all about. First, as I said, it's the pod. Drew's going to be up here with us. Kimberly and I will do some news. Then we'll do the game with Drew. And then, obviously, Heather comes on, and we will talk, oh, my God, all the important things.
So much news to discuss. We will not get to all of it, but we will do our best. But before we start officially recording the show, we got to do a little bit of like breaking the fourth wall, because at the end of the day, we're radio producers. And so there's a couple of extra production things. So first of all, if you have questions for one of us or Professor Cox Richardson, head to Slido, right? So it's Slido, SLIDO.com. And then
Sorry. It's hot up here.
and enter the code podcast, add your name, and then when we get to the Q&A session, we're going to get to as many of those questions as we can, and we really would love to include a bunch of your questions. So go ahead and head over to Slido when you get a minute. Also, about halfway through the show, we're going to take a pause for our mid-roll break, which if you listen to the podcast, you hear us say, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And that's when we hear from our supporters. So we need that for our podcast production. And then at the end of the first segment, because we are recording this for our regular Friday show, we're going to have some credits. We're going to thank some of the people who've helped us put this together, but you don't actually have to get up to leave. We're not going to be done. We're going to have more after that. So we're going to put all that together with our podcasting magic, if you will just bear with us. But with all of that out of the way, who's ready to do the live show?
All right, excellent. Oh, man.
Yeah, that's the music. Already. That's when we start.
Well, you know what happens is you start talking, and then we start. All right. Hey, everybody, I'm Kai Ryssdal. Welcome to Make Me Smart on a Friday. Here we are in WBUR CitySpace in Boston. Woo! I know, right?
He didn't identify himself, but you all know who he is. He's Kai Ryssdal.
Oh, did I not say my name? So I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sorry. I'm Kimberly Adams, and thank you, everybody, for coming out in person in Boston for our live edition of the show. Boston, make some noise.
It is thankfully Friday. We will do Economics on Tap. Drew Jostat will be here, of course, for our favorite game, half full, half empty, maybe a special bonus Boston edition. But first, we will talk about what we're drinking. Kimberly Adams, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm obviously drinking wine. I believe it's called the Kimberly Cab. Who's having the Kimberly Cab tonight?
Who's out there?
Cheers. And also a special toast to everybody joining us on the live stream. Everybody turn around and wave at the cameras.
Where is the camera? Do we know?
So they're over there.
Right,
they're in the middle. They're up over there. Good. And so, yeah, thanks. I know that we sold out here, so we couldn't have everybody we wanted to join. But thank you to everybody tuning in on the live stream. So, yeah, I've got my Kimberly Cab. What you got?
Good. Who's having the Kai PA? Anybody? Yes? Oh, you guys. That's just terrible.
It's not.
I'm sorry. That's really seriously embarrassing. Dogfish Head, by the way, is what I'm drinking. So Dogfish Head 60. So thank you for all of that. Water, tea, coffee. Anybody else? Right? Come on. Show of hands. Show of hands. No? All right, good. Look, it's Friday night at 7 o'clock. I get it. You're not doing it.
I mean, healthy choices are good.
Totally.
We support healthy choices on this podcast.
All right. So we will do as we always do on Friday. Number one will be news. Kimberly Adams, what do you got?
So I have a couple of articles. First of all, I'm going to bring it up here. One from Reuters, which is about Europe kind of getting ready for a potential Trump administration by setting up their systems to boost their sanctions on Russia. So I'm just going to read like the entry paragraph here. European diplomats are preparing to underpin sanctions on Russia, anticipating that a return of former U.S. President Donald Trump could undermine Western efforts to isolate Moscow, sources with knowledge of the discussions told Reuters. The talks among EU officials and envoys are centered on several initiatives to ensure that European sanctions would remain in place longer term, bolstering them through tighter enforcement, even if Washington changes tack. Like, look, we know it's a really close election here in the United States, which has all sorts of implications for us here, but it also has major implications on the global stage. And you clearly see European leaders as well as world leaders elsewhere kind of getting ready for what a potential next Trump administration would mean. They kind of know what a Harris administration would mean. She's been very clear that she would continue to support the Ukrainians and the ongoing war there. A little less clear what she'd do in the sort of Israel-Gaza conflict at this point. But at least when it comes to the European alliance against Russia, we know what the Biden administration is doing, what the Harris administration, a potential Harris administration might do. A little less optimistic on the European side what that would mean in a Trump administration. And that's just on the military side. So kind of part two of my news fix is a story I saw today in CNBC, headline, German finance minister warns of retaliation if the U.S. kicks off a trade war. Many of you have heard Trump loves the word tariff. What did he say?
It's a beautiful word. It's the most beautiful word.
Better than love, better than faith, better than all these other things.
Yeah.
So the German finance minister today warned that if the United States kicked off a trade war against the European Union, that they would retaliate. We've said it a bunch of times on this podcast. Kai said it a bunch of times on his show. American consumers pay for tariffs. It, especially these kind of broad scale tariffs that Trump is talking about, of just blanket tariffs on everybody for anything he feels like at a given point in time. American consumers will eat those costs. That's just the tariffs that he's talking about imposing. When you start talking about retaliatory tariffs, that escalates that cost even more.
Let's set the stage here on tariffs, right? He has talked about 10 to 20% tariffs on everything that gets imported into this economy, 60% tariffs on everything from China, right? Which is better than $500 billion a year. So the scope of what he's actually talking about is economically terrifying.
It says, if such a 20% tariff were implemented by the U.S., the EU and Germany's gross domestic product would fall in the coming years. Trade is one of the main pillars of the German economy, suggesting heightened tensions, uncertainty, and tariffs would hit the country harder than others. So we're talking about some of the U.S.'s major allies having severe economic impacts locally if we choose to pursue these policy strategies.
Can I do my tariff rant?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We love a good Kai rant.
So here's my tariff rant. Trump has said repeatedly over the last number of months, and again within the last 48-ish hours, that he wants to get rid of the income tax in this economy and replace it with tariff income. That is to say, nobody pays any more income tax. We're just going to tariff everything that comes into the economy, and we're going to make it up all in tariffs. Here's the challenge with that. Okay? We import, give or take, $3.8 trillion worth of stuff into this economy every year. We collect at the federal level $2.2 trillion worth in income tax revenue. So if you do the math on $3.8 trillion worth of imports, you have to have a tariff rate of 60% to get that $2.2 trillion. But when you start taxing things, which is what a tariff is, right? And let's all remember that we spell tariff, TARIFFS.
Remember, they can
right?
hear us outside.
It ends with an FFS. That's okay. Everybody out there is an adult or they're in college. And also they can spell. Anyway, so look, the more you tariff and tax things, the less of it people will buy. So you start at a 60% tariff rate on $3.8 trillion, but those imports are going to go down because we're not going to be buying as much stuff. So you have to go up to a 70% tariff rate and an 80% tariff rate. And the amount of stuff we're buying from overseas goes down even more because we're tariffing it even more. And then you have to have a tariff rate of infinity to pay for the federal budget. That's insane.
We laugh, but let's think about who really feels this, right? Who are the people that if we do decide to invest in American businesses and invest in American infrastructure, and you do have the option to buy a product made in the United States that's likely to be more expensive versus the cheaper product that now has tariffs slapped on it. Look, we saw this with the rising rates of inflation that have now thankfully eased. Lower income people feel this the most. You're effectively, even if American businesses and American business owners potentially end up better off, which a lot of economists will say they will not, because remember, a lot of American manufacturers import their supplies to make the goods that they produce in the United States. The people who will feel this the hardest are the same people who have felt higher rates of inflation the hardest. Lower income people, people in marginalized groups.
Yeah, I have nothing to add because it's actually economically terrifying, truly.
Well, on that happy
There you
note,
go.
what's your news fix?
Okay, mine is The Failure of American Journalism, part 3,497.
Except for here tonight. We're doing
Except
great.
for here
We're
tonight.
doing great.
But you know, I mean, if you have questions for us later, we'll certainly take the
we'll
slings and
answer
arrows.
'em.
But,
We'll do
but
our
look,
best.
so I'm sure those of you who are on the news or peripherally attached to the news, like I'm assuming most of you are, saw the story from David Folkenflik this morning at National Public Radio. He broke the story that the Washington Post has decided 11 days before the closest election in certainly living memory not to endorse a candidate. And it gets worse throughout the day. It comes out, thanks to Washington Post reporters actually doing the reporting, that there was a decision made to endorse Kamala Harris. They had started working on the endorsement. And then this morning, the management said, we're not going to endorse this year. And they put out a fairly transparent statement that said, well, this is upholding our tradition of not endorsing people, even though, you know, they've been endorsing people for the past 30 years and they do local candidates as well. We all need to remember that Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. We also all need to remember that in the first Trump administration, the Trump administration went after Amazon repeatedly and hard, and Amazon took the first Trump administration to court. So it's not difficult to read between the lines of the announcement that Will Lewis, the publisher of the Washington Post, put out this morning, saying we're doing this as a principled stand. It's not hard to read between the lines and say, are you really? Let's back that up to Tuesday this week. I've been traveling. I'm sorry, I can't remember. But the Los Angeles Times. Oh, sorry. Let me see.
Yeah. There it is.
Oh, there you go. Right. There you
Yeah.
go. Right. So on earlier this week, the Los Angeles Times, owned by another billionaire, Patrick Soon-Shiong, who made his money in healthcare and biotechnology, said that his paper is not going to offer an endorsement. At that point, it was 13 days before the closest election in history. And I don't know what to do with this because, look, none of these endorsements are going to change a single vote. And one can make a reasoned case that newspapers ought not be endorsing anyway because the listeners don't really understand, readers, whatever, it's all radio. Readers don't really understand the difference between, and the existence of a firewall between the editorial pages and the news gathering pages and the business side of the house. So whether they should or not, whatever. But the idea that this is what they do 11 days before an election, I think is an exercise in cowardice of the highest degree and is yet another is another failure on the part of American media in a dangerous time.
So let's talk business model here, right? Because we're business and economics journalists. Yeah. Journalism doesn't make money anymore, right? We've seen newspapers shutter all over the country. As we saw in North Carolina after these recent hurricanes, the last news outlet standings are usually the public radio stations. Let's be real, because they are supported by philanthropists, they're supported by their local communities, just like WBUR is here in Boston. When you are beholden to billionaires for your existence, at the end of the day, you can't say no to something like that. That's why you have resignations at the LA Times, at the Washington Post, of people who are like, this was the last straw. And look, I will tell you, no one has ever, in the entirety of my career at Marketplace, ever told me, you cannot do X story because we think it's going to piss off our funders. Not a single time ever.
Sorry, I've been at Marketplace a long time. No. Okay, no. Yeah.
Okay, so the larger point there is the business model is fractured. And I don't know how we escape from it, because we kind of need billionaires to save what are not profitable news organizations.
Okay, but wait. Here we have two billionaires, right? One of whom...
Which is wild how many billionaires there are.
I know, there are a lot of billionaires, but these are the two we got, right?
Yeah.
One of whom has enormous business interests before the federal government, Amazon and Jeff Bezos, right?
Both of them do.
The other of whom, and well, I don't know what Patrick Soon's showing. I'm sure he does, but
you don't
Amazon
become a billionaire with a lot of...
Amazon's the one that came to mind. But both of them are in line for huge tax breaks.
Yes, there's that. So at the end of 2025, a bunch of provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act will expire, and billionaires, including our beloved Elon Musk, who I know you are just such a huge fan of, Kai.
That's a whole separate pod. We'll be back in a week. We'll do Elon Musk here.
Have a serious financial gain at stake if Trump ends up winning the presidency. And it is, look, I have a lot of friends in journalism in Washington, D.C., right? And yeah, he needs another beer at that point. Good looking out. Good looking out.
Thank you.
A lot of people I know personally who have lost their jobs in journalism in just the last year. People who are award-winning journalists who have been doing the work for decades, who cannot find work, because the business model is so fundamentally broken. Because pretty much, unless you are in public media at this point, or nonprofit
and
media,
even in public media, I mean, come on, we know the times have been difficult in public media. You and I both have friends who've been laid off.
Yes, we do.
Right?
WNYC,
right. NPR,
stations in NPR,
sure.
Stations in California.
Yeah.
And so it ends up being that the only way to save some of these papers is these extremely wealthy individuals. But then they have this kind of power.
But I don't know who said this on Twitter today. I apologize. If you haven't got the guts to own a newspaper,
don't buy a newspaper.
All right.
That's probably a good place to end it.
The clock says we got to go. We're coming back.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yes, it's my turn to talk.
That's what it says right here.
We follow the script. We follow instructions. Okay, that is going to be it for the news. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Drew Jostad is going to join us live for a round of Half Full, Half Empty.
Woo.
Woo!
I cannot tell you how much Drew hates this. He would rather be anywhere than right here. And it is a testament to how much he loves Marketplace and me and Kimberly and the producers of this podcast that he agrees to come do this. Thank you, Drew. Anyway, I'll do the actual official open at the second half of the show now. So it is Make Me Smart live in Boston from WBUR CitySpace. Thanks to everybody who's joining us tonight on this Friday.
All right, who is ready to play a little round of Half Full, Half Empty?
All right. You got to explain the rules of the game.
Yeah. Rules of the game are simple. I have a list of 5 topics and trends from the recent news. Those topics are secret to you.
Yeah.
And so this will be a surprise. I'm going to list them off.
Wait. I have to tell you, earlier in the green room, Drew physically moved himself to the other side of the room so that I wouldn't accidentally look at his computer while he was prepping for this segment because he didn't want me to see what his topics were.
These rules, I take these rules very
Journalism
seriously.
ethics, people. Journalism ethics.
All right, what's the first one? Oh, wait, I should stop for a second. Because usually we do this in the live stream on YouTube with a poll. Since we're here live with you all, instead what we're going to do
On
is...
the last question.
No, on all the
we're
questions.
doing all of them?
All the questions get audience interaction this time. Yeah. So for each topic, I'm going to call out, or he's going to call out, whatever, half full, and we'll give a round of applause if you're feeling optimistic about it. We'll then call out a half empty if you feel less than. So, all right, let's do it.
First topic. American Airlines is testing a system that will play an alert sound when someone attempts to board ahead of their assigned group.
Are you kidding me? Seriously?
Oh my gosh, you haven't heard this story?
No.
This is about gate lice. Have you heard this term?
I have not, but oh my God, nanny state, Jesus.
Wait. So, this is the idea that sometimes when we have our assigned boarding groups, that sometimes people will try to jump the line with the idea that the gate agent doesn't want to deal with the hassle of fighting with you over being in the wrong group. And so they just let you through, even if it's not your boarding group. You have strong feelings. But wait.
I have
So then basically this new system would, if you try to board with a group that is not yours, it will give like a really loud, obnoxious beep so that it shames you in front of everyone. And then the gate agent can't actually board you and they have to send you to the back of the line.
Oh my God. I think I'm appalled at this entire crowd. Is there nobody who remembers the days when you were in group 6 and you were like, I'm going to try, and you got on with group 2 and you were like, yes, I put one over on the man?
So now
Does nobody remember that?
That Kai is gate lice.
Okay, so wait. So we're going to short circuit the poll on this one because I have a question for you, Kimberly Adams.
Yes.
You are all about not...
I like to fly Southwest because I like this idea of everybody being able to like board. If you can get the online fast enough and like log in quick, anybody can get into the A group in theory.
But yeah, I mean, you don't want, class divisions and all that jazz. You want fairness, right? That's what you're all about.
Ideally.
So if I can put one over on the man,
Wait,
you're into
so
public shaming and...
You think that putting one over on the man is going to help us eliminate class division?
I don't know.
Help me make it make sense.
All right, let's go.
Okay. Who is half full on shaming people into boarding with the right boarding group? I think we have a lot of Group 1 and Group 2 folks in the crowd tonight. Who's half empty?
I'd say it's 50-50.
I'd say that's 50-50.
All right. Anyway,
where do you? No. We have to weigh in. I think I know
empty.
where you.
We know where I am.
I am going to go half full because sometimes those early boarding groups are because someone needs additional assistance.
They get it beforehand.
Sometimes it's families traveling with children.
They also get it beforehand.
Not always. Not on every
Trust me,
airline.
I've been a guy traveling with small children.
Fair. I have not. No, actually, that's not true. I've traveled with my sister. I don't know. Like, I think I prefer a little bit more order than the chaos at the gate because I just I dislike fundamentally the sorting of people into classes in every single segment of our lives, including at the airport. And so anything to make that less embarrassing and painful and speed it along, I'm in favor of. So I'm going to go half full. I'm sorry.
All right.
Actually, I'm not sorry. Go ahead, Drew.
It wouldn't be as big of a deal if it wasn't such a premium on that overhead bin space.
No joke,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point. Yeah.
Last week, spaceflight services company Axiom Space revealed a new spacesuit for the NASA Artemis 3 mission, which was designed in collaboration with Prada. Are you half full or half empty?
For reals?
I think it was a joke at first, and then they actually went with it.
Really?
Yeah, Prada.
I know nothing about it. I will say I think the SpaceX spacesuits look stupid.
Is that your bias against Elon
No.
Musk?
I just don't think they're cool looking at all.
What do you think? Have you seen the Prada space?
I have not seen the Prada spacesuits, but anyway,
we're not gonna
I'll
say
pull it up and you give your thoughts.
okay,
Because
so-
clearly I've tainted the audience.
While we're looking it up, okay, who's full on the Prada spacesuits? Half full.
Oh, that's pretty lame.
Half empty on the Prada spacesuits. Now, is that because y'all don't like Prada, or because you don't think the fashion house should be involved in space flight? Okay, it's that one. It's that one. Did you find it yet?
I did. It looks like a very conventional sort of Apollo astronaut spacesuit, and I'm an Apollo guy, so I'm going to go with that. I'm okay with Prada, actually.
I'm gonna go half empty. I feel like scientists should be designing spacesuits.
Well, it's not. Never mind.
I mean, I'm sure the scientists weighed in so that the astronauts wouldn't die, but also like, I don't know. And it's. I don't have strong feelings about it. Let's move on.
Next one, for the 12th time overall and first time since 1981, we got a Dodgers-Yankees World Series. Game 1 is tonight. Are you half full or half empty?
By the way, we have to leave in half an hour because first pitch is at 8:08. You think I'm kidding, but I'm actually not. So I grew up a Yankees fan.
It's
You're in Boston, Kai. What did you expect? What did you expect?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I have a lovely view of Fenway Park out of my hotel window, I should say. Good looking out by WBUR. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Commonwealth
playing to the
Hotel.
hometown crowd. Nice. So I grew up as a Yankees fan. I've lived in LA now for 25. Stop.
Again, it's Boston. What did you
Boston
expect?
people. But I've been in LA for 25
You're lucky
years.
all you're
my,
getting is
my
boots.
oldest son lives and dies with the Dodgers. So this one's a little challenging for me. Brief historical note. Fernando Valenzuela died this week, right? Number 34 for the Dodgers, amazing pitcher. His rookie season, he pitches the first game of the 1981 World Series. They lose. They go down 2-0 to the Yanks, but then come back and win 4-2 in 6 games. So for that reason, and also because I'm not a big Aaron Judge fan, I'm going with the Dodgers this time. I don't even know if that was the question, but...
So who's half full? What was the
Sorry.
question again?
Come on.
Just, half full or half empty on this year's World Series.
Oh, I'm all the
Half
way full.
full?
All the way full. All the way full.
Half empty. The
Red
St.
Sox
Louis-
suck? No, sorry.
Good luck getting back to the hotel safely tonight. St. Louis Cardinals aren't in it, so
Mark, it's
I'm going to
appalled.
say half empty.
Clearly, I'm never coming back to WBUR again.
Never, ever.
Margaret Lowe is not having me.
Let's move on before he gets pulled off the stage.
Are you half full or half empty on election night watch parties?
Oh, God.
So I have big feelings about this.
I think we all do.
So my very first job in journalism ever when I was 16 years old was as an intern for a local TV station in St. Louis, Missouri. And in the 2000 presidential election, I spent the night running all over the city as polling places were opened, closed. We ended up at the courthouse because people were saying that people were being disenfranchised from their voting and like all of this stuff. And so we were up until like 2-3 o'clock in the morning just trying to figure out where people were supposed to vote in St. Louis, Missouri. That was in 2000, not even more recently. Nevertheless, here we are still. I think we do ourselves a real disservice assuming that we are going to get an answer on the election on election night. We know there are going to be a ton of challenges. We know there's going to be a ton of misinformation. And having to have that answer instantly is only going to hurt us. And it's reinforced by candidates with their balloons and like having all that stuff suspended over your head, waiting for the balloon drop or waiting for the announcement and staying up all night. It's bad for our nerves, first of all. Everybody remembers 2016 and how stressful that was, and 2020. I don't think I'm going to presage myself here. I'm all the way empty at this point on election night watch parties, even though I'll probably end up going to one.
I agree, and I, of course, will watch because that's who I am. But don't you think we should be able to know right away?
No, I don't. I don't think we should have a definitive answer.
No, sorry. Don't you think the mechanics of our election system ought to let us know within, I don't know, 12 hours?
Within 12 hours, sure, but polling places close. The last of the polling places close, let's say, what time in LA?
8 o'clock in California.
8 o'clock in California, which is going to be
11 o'clock here.
11
Hawaii, right? Sorry, yes, absolutely.
Hawaii. But let's be real about what the Electoral College is and how it works. But let's just say, so you're talking about 11 o'clock Eastern, right? And some places are going to insist on a hand count. And if it is indeed a close election, there are multiple states where if the outcome is within a certain number of percentage points,
agree.
It triggers an automatic recount. But I would rather have a tentative provisional outcome that a state does not like lay out immediately and just say, here's what we know so far, but it's provisional, which is what they kind of do. But I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of in the horse race mentality. If you are so wedded to we must have an answer instantly, and then you know it's going to be challenged, and then you have to roll it back, that's harmful.
I can refinance my mortgage on the phone sitting here, but we can't figure out who's going to be the president of the United States within 12 hours?
Because that's one person working with one company. You're talking about millions of people across a massive country with dozens, if not hundreds, of different laws and jurisdictions and rules. And I think one of the responsibilities that journalists have in this election in particular is to just own that it's complicated.
This country invented this, which gives me the planet's knowledge in my lap. You don't think we can have results?
I think we can, but we can also have intense legal challenges that because we believe in our criminal justice system or our civil justice system, we let those things play out. I'm going to land on the election night watch party, and this desire to have an instant answer to complicated questions is going to be harmful to us this time. This time in particular.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, I guess we've
devolved into theoretical versus reality. Drew,
I can't wait until I hear what Heather Cox Richardson has to say about this a little bit later.
She's over there rolling her eyes.
Okay. Oh gosh, you have a better line of sight, I'm afraid. Half full on election night watch parties.
Really? What? You brave person, stand up.
Yes. All right. Half empty.
Wow. So does that mean I can't have my mother-in-law over to watch?
You can have.
Because I don't want to.
So can I say where I'm probably going to end up watching the election results?
You're going to go to Noel's.
No, I might bring Noelle to the party. So Noelle King used to be a reporter at Marketplace. She now co-hosts a podcast called Today Explained. Big fan of her and her show. And she and I used to cover protests in Cairo together. Wild times. No, I will be with the International Federation of Election Supervisors.
Oh my God!
Which
you're
I
such
will
a
be
nerd.
hanging out with international election monitors.
I'm saving you from yourself. Drew, where do we go from here?
Next topic.
All right, wrapping it up. It is October, and we are in Massachusetts. Are you half full or half empty on going to Salem for Halloween?
So the whole audience has an opinion, and I'm like, what? So who's half full on that? And somebody tell me what it is. No, I know what it is. The witch trials. I know that.
Okay, so somebody in the crowd just said only crazy people do that, and now I feel bad. But who's half full on going to Salem in October?
Oh, that's not very many.
I think they're just trying to make me feel better. Half empty.
Yeah.
I feel like it's similar to going to New York for New Year's
I was
Eve
just
or
gonna say.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
for the 4th of
Yeah,
July.
totally, right.
Which I
Exactly.
would never.
Exactly.
Well, I mean,
All
I'm
right.
in Washington, D.C. for 4th of July. I would probably want to go and visit Salem not around Halloween. I'd love to visit at some point, but not right now. It's a little too much for me.
Yeah, no, I'm not going.
Yeah,
Also,
okay.
scary, whatever. I don't do scary.
But you think Neverending Story is scary, which you still...
Which I'm still not watching. For those of you who know, you know. Where are we? I'm just keeping an eye on the clock here.
Yeah. We gotta get it
How many
moving.
more do we
Okay.
have?
That's it.
That's it. That was it? Oh, my
All right, so
Lord.
thank you, Drew.
Well, there we go.
So for those of you seeing him for the first time, is that how you thought he would look?
The beard is relatively new, by the way. It's like 18 months.
Okay. So, well, that was a lot of fun. For those of you listening to the Make Me Smart podcast, that is going to be it for us tonight. I want to thank you, everybody listening, for joining us for Make Me Smart live in Boston. Tons of fun, as always, if we want to hear from you, because we cannot do the show without some good listener input. So if you have questions, comments, suggestions, or audio that you want to hear us talk about, you know how to reach us, makemesmart@marketplace.org, or you can leave us a voicemail at 508. What's the number, y'all?
Oh, my God.
There
You guys
it
are
is.
amazing. Wow. Oh
The
my
letter
God,
U, the
that's
letter
the letter
B.
B. Amy Scott, right?
Yeah.
Make Me Smart is produced by Courtney Bergseeker. Drew Johnstadt wrote the theme music, believe it or not. He's a multi-talented
Hey!
fellow to half full, half
Woo!
empty. Marissa Cabrera is our senior producer, and Bridget Bodner is the director of podcasts.
Marissa looking beautiful back there tonight, as well as Francesca Levy over here, who's our executive director of digital. Marketplace's general manager, who you all saw earlier, Neil Scarborough. And today's live episode was engineered by WBUR's Chris Barrios back
Chris!
there. And a special thank you to WBUR CitySpace for hosting us here tonight. Good night, everyone. So that was a fake good night, but
That
we
was fake
appreciate
enough. That's
it.
right. So what's going to happen now is that Marissa and Courtney are going to earn their paychecks, and they're going to hustle backstage, and they're going to get the file for the half hour that you just heard, and they're going to get it up on the podcast feed so that the zillions of people who aren't among the
so
200 of you who get to hear this are going to be able to hear it in their feeds probably by midnight. So what's going to happen now is that we're going to have Heather Cox Richardson come up here in a minute. We're going to spend 40-ish minutes with her about all the
30-ish.
important stuff. Ish. Well, she's got she's got a thing she's got to do later, so I get that. Which I think is sleep, right? Isn't that your deal?
Boundaries are important.
She's so tired.
That's important.
So we are going to be taking your questions as best we can. So go to slido.com if you got a phone and enter the code podcast, and we'll figure out a way to get it up here. I have no idea what that is, but
We have
I'm
a
just
link
the talent.
in our
So,
script that you'll be able to see all the
Do we?
questions.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah, there's a link in the script.
I was on a plane for the tech rehearsal, just to
He
be
was.
clear. That's why I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. This is why we do it. It's collaborative. We work together. It's all fun. So
All right.
I'm
So-
out of curiosity. So I know we have at least one person here other than me from DC. Where's Laura? No, not here. There she is. Okay, here with her mom. What's the furthest other than, has anybody come to this further from DC? You guys don't count coming from Los Angeles. Anybody? Okay. I was just curious. All right. But tell me where y'all have come in from. I know we've got some Maine folks. We've got some New Hampshire folks. Where else? Amherst. Massachusetts also, but cool. Where else? New Jersey.
Jersey.
Wow.
Everything's legal in Jersey.
Okay. How long
Sorry.
is it a drive, or did you take the train? Oh, thanks for coming in.
Bless you.
Appreciate it.
Oh, my God.
Hopefully the leaves were pretty on the way. Where else? Around the corner?
Nice. Perfect.
That counts too. All right. So now that we've vamped for a bit of a minute, we are going to go ahead and move on to our next segment. So without further ado, Our special guest tonight is Boston College history professor Heather Cox Richardson, author of many books, including Democracy Awakening, Notes on the State of America, and the popular Substack newsletter, Letters from an American. Please join us in welcoming historian Heather Cox Richardson to the stage.
What's great is that she's been doing this so long after this book, and she's been doing speaking tours. She just kind of sits up here and goes, "Yo,
What's up?" Can you show everyone your book and how you've...
Well, I'm a history guy, and this is right up my alley. And so I took great liberties with this book because it's amazing. And we should have scrapped the whole show and just talked to Heather.
I feel like there are two different kinds of people with books. There are those of us who like to keep them pretty, which is me.
So I have the
And then
dust
there's
cover.
Kai.
I have the dust cover back at home, but just for the record. Also, I figured she wouldn't mind if I wrote in her book. You probably write in books.
How do you feel about people writing in your
I
book?
don't write in books. I
Sorry.
don't dog-ear books, but I don't
Sorry.
have any objection to other people. Books should be lived with.
Sorry.
Books should be lived with. No,
Hey, listen,
Yes, ma'am.
mail-in ballots. That's
Oh,
why
let's
you can't have a decision the night of. And a number of states, including Pennsylvania, have laws that you can't even open.
I know. That's a new law in Pennsylvania.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. But if you're overseas or if you're in the military, you got to have your ballot counted.
Okay, but so look, about which two things. In principle, shouldn't we be able to know?
Well, yes, in principle,
Okay,
but a
all
lot
right.
of people have the vested
Okay.
interest in us not knowing, and that's
Totally,
something we work on.
and we'll get there. This is a little sideways, but whatever. How do you feel about early voting in person as opposed to?
Yay,
tilt it.
audio.
There we go.
Thank you.
God bless producers.
as-
Can we give a round of applause for all of our producers and
Totally.
engineers who make us sound good despite our best efforts?
So the early voting window versus, and I grant you there are infrastructure challenges with this, but the community experience of all of us going to the polls on election day.
So I'm going to be radical over here and say not only should we have early voting, but we should have a holiday on election.
Oh, totally agree.
For sure.
Totally agree.
sure.
Totally
So,
agree.
yeah, I mean, you're talking, millions and millions and millions
Yeah.
of people. So you got to have a lot of ways for different people to be able to vote. Yeah, and I do like the sense you've got going on now. It's kind of a party, and people are turning out to vote as a group and standing in line. And yeah, I like the vibe we got going on this year.
Mm-hmm.
Who were we talking to that they were talking about showing up to the polling place wearing costumes and like celebrating?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember.
Halloween?
Yeah.
Okay, that might be a
Somebody.
little bit much at 7:00 in the morning. Oh my God, it's a
But
chicken.
that's just it. If there's early voting, you don't have to go at 7. You can like go at 3, 4, 5 o'clock, have a cocktail afterwards, and make it a day. But also, like, we were just talking about this on Decoding Democracy about people who have disabilities and mobility issues. It can be really hard to get out to a polling place on election day when there's a ton of people out, or if you are somebody who has a difficult schedule. Like, all of these things can make it really challenging to vote in this like finite window of time. But we could spend the whole time talking about this.
Do you disagree, Kai?
No, I look, Kimberly raises, as she always does, really good points. I just value, perhaps it's false romanticism, the idea of voting and deciding our fate collectively as a community exercise. And maybe it's because I grew up in a small town in New York where we used to go and have community meetings and select the town alderman, and the school budget was voted on literally in the middle school auditorium, Maybe those days are gone, and I get that. But so I've got a whole speech I give sometimes on part of what's affected this country is the lack of shared experiences. And my particular take on it, I'm a veteran, and my particular take on it is lack of a shared ethos of national service. But a very small part of a shared national experience is coming together to choose collectively who we want to lead us. And the more I say it out loud now, it sounds more falsely romantic, but it does sort of linger in my mind as a thing that we might aspire to, provided, of course, we can accommodate those who need and those who can't do it conventionally.
And that's the thing, right? Like, what do we value more? The shared experience or expanded access?
Right. No, I agree. I
But
totally.
could you two split the baby and simply have the watch night parties 2 nights after the election?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I don't know.
Because
You
I get
lose
your
some of
point.
the
Yeah.
energy.
Or have a 48-hour party. You know,
Because
there's that.
because a lot of it
Look,
really
I have a
is-
14-hour party once a year, so
Yeah.
I'm down for it.
but a lot of it is driven by the media that wants to have what is it, the needle or something, and you're like, oh
Well,
please, no, don't move that needle.
who's got nightmares about the 2016 New York Times needle? Oh, come on. Way more of you do than just 3 people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
And
Yeah,
they
anyway.
come out and they say, oh, look, so-and-so has
Yeah.
97% of the
Yeah.
vote. And you're like, and then you look and there's been 316 votes. It's like, really?
Right.
Like,
So-
I could clean my whole house before we get to a number that matters
I
here.
really want to get your thoughts on this whole endorsement thing that we were talking about earlier, and the Washington Post and the LA Times choosing not to make an endorsement.
So there are 2 questions that you asked. You talked about the media, and you're talking more about the endorsements themselves. And as we all know, the endorsements aren't going to move any votes, right? So the real question is, what is the media's role in this moment? And why didn't the LA Times and the Washington Post make endorsements? Which to me, of the 2, is the more immediate and the more interesting question, because I would argue in this moment, and this I'll go back to the media, but I would argue in this moment that it is worth thinking about why they didn't endorse anybody. And I would suggest that it probably has a lot to do with the fact that Donald Trump's brain is tapioca at this point. And what I'm saying is that if you are somebody who's going to have business in front of the
Right.
U.S. government, you don't really care about Donald Trump right now. You care about whoever's going to take over the Republican Party. And you don't know who's going to take over the Republican Party. So there's this battle going on now, I think, between the different factions that could get control of the Republican Party. And if you are somebody like Bezos, you don't want to piss anybody off. Or if you are somebody like Musk, you want Trump's people in there, so you get your Chinese tariffs to protect your electric vehicles. So when I saw those, my first reaction was not about the media, although that's a different question. It was, oh boy, there is a huge fight going on about who's going to inherit the Republican Party. All right, which I'm happy to talk about, but the media question is the more important one here at this moment, I think. You
yeah.
look
So
like you
answer
disagree.
that one, and then I've got a question about the Republican Party, but go ahead.
Okay, so we are, the problems you identified with the media are true. The jobs that these guys do is so difficult. You guys do a great job. The people who are out there getting information to all of us are heroes. They really are. It's a really hard job, and I
Thanks.
try never to criticize
It's
the
not
media.
us. It's, yeah.
But, and there are a lot of great writers, by the way, at the LA Times and the Washington Post and all the other places that y'all canceled your subscriptions to, who really are doing their jobs, and they're worth supporting. But one of the things that I think is really interesting in this moment that we don't talk a lot about is you just said we have no shared experiences in this country, and yet here we are. We have a live stream going wherever that went. You're going to be heard by hundreds of thousands of people all over the country with this particular shared experience. And one of the things about this moment is there is certainly the legacy media, which in many ways has dropped some balls. But I think one of the reasons we have the political movement going on that I identify in this moment is because there are so many people who have gone to a different form of media that is much more bottom up.
Yeah.
So you knew to criticize some of these endorsements because Oliver Darcy got the story first, right? In his, I think it was in his Substack.
Yeah.
And you want to know about how the law is going with regard to some of the cases that are out there. You turn to one of the 5 or 6 really fabulous legal writers that are writing on their own hook. And so I look at what the Post and the Times did as a political story, but I also look at the media story as being one in which the model that you were talking about is collapsing. Mm-hmm. And what's coming up instead are all these independent people who are doing crackerjack work and have millions of followers. You know, Brian Tyler Cohen's YouTube channel has more than 3 million followers, and I think he does it out of his dining room, and it's really, really good. Mm-hmm. And I suspect that what we're going to see, you're his mom, right? And kidding, she's not. I think what we're going to see, I think what we're watching the media change. And this has happened really dramatically a number of times in our history. The whole way we got papers like the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune were because they recognized there was a hole in what at the time was modern media that was not articulating a new political moment. And so they were created. The Times in 51, the Chicago Tribune in, I think it was about 56. 18.
18, yeah. I was just going to say.
And you saw the same thing in the late 19th century when you got the rise of all these new popular papers and the mugwumps and so on. So I think we're seeing a media change, and it's just part of a larger ecosystem.
Can I ask you a question about this national moment, actually, and getting back to the Republican Party and well, it's not like you ever take it off, your historian hat on. We are in a moment of national spasm. And
I've never heard it called quite that, but okay.
Right? I mean, it is.
Transition.
No.
New era.
No. And the most recent example I can think of on a similar scale is McCarthyism. And what I want to know from you with a lens on history is, one cannot know, obviously, what's going to happen in this election, but how long does it take for a national moment like this to pass? No, this is a serious question.
When is it going to be?
When will we have gotten it out of our system?
Never. That reactionary strand in American history has always been part of us. There's really two ways to think about American history anyway, and maybe world history, and that is that there are some people who believe that we are all created equal and have a right to be treated equally before the law and to have a say in our government. And there are some people who think that a few people are better than everybody else and have the right and maybe the duty to rule us all. And both of those strands are deep in American history. All we can do is to try and put those reactionaries into a place where they cannot command power over the rest of us. And I don't think that will ever go away, at least in America, but I do think we can put it in such a place where it can't command us. And I think you're asking a more limited question, and that is my opinion about how long this moment will take to pass. You know, American history turns on a dime. I mean, it can last forever. You look at the imposition of one-party state and the kind of hierarchical system I'm going to use instead of other words I could be using in this moment. Oh, I don't know, let's use them. Fascism. In the American South from about 1874 to 1965. That took a really long time, right? But then on the same token, in the 1920s, 1928, Herbert Hoover wins the election in a landslide and says, you know, we're done. We've almost gotten rid of poverty, and you know we're going to be rid of it very soon in the future, and nobody's ever going to vote for a Democrat again. Yeah. And within a year, that's all in the toilet, and FDR wins in a landslide and changed the entire country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You talk a lot in your book and in your newsletters about sort of the myths that we have around our political narratives, this, what you say is a myth about Republicans being better for the economy. But, you know, just listening to our conversation just now and you know, Kai talking about the shared experience and how we don't have shared experiences in the same way that we used to. I think about a lot of myths that come around the narrative of shared experiences in the United States. We talk about sort of the shared experiences of how we used to experience media when, for so much of American history, media was controlled by white men from the East Coast, highly educated, who were the only voices and the only narratives that we heard in media. So did we ever actually have shared experiences, or did we just have certain experiences that were portrayed as shared experiences of America?
So it's a great observation, and I do think that there are times that are shared experiences, usually when you're lined up against someone, like in World War II, for example, although the individual experiences of that war were very different, of course. But I just got to throw in here, many people don't know that we actually had a very large and very vibrant Black newspaper community in the late 19th century. Hundreds of Black newspapers across this country, and they were sharing information with white newspapers. That's gone, but there was a moment there in the late 19th century when people really were trying to figure out what America was, and there were a lot of voices, including indigenous newspapers as well, by the way. So the one thing that I would say about shared experiences is that they are characterized by everybody coming together to fight something. And one of the things in this moment that I think is so interesting is how that appears to be happening right now. And one of the things that jumps out to me is, if you looked at Taylor Swift's Eras tour, that really...
Not at all where I thought you were going to go with that.
Well, but that was really interesting because I don't know how many people saw her. I did not. But it was multi-generational. How many things in this country are multi-generational and related to pop culture? And, of course, a hallmark of that were the friendship bracelets.
I don't know this. Can you explain more?
Yeah, they were the friendship bracelets. You wore them. I don't have mine on. People have been giving them to me all across the country. They're beads that say things.
Okay.
And-
I know what a friendship
Oh, all
bracelet
right.
is. I just don't know the relation to Taylor Swift.
So that has been picked up by the
Swifties?
No, the Swifties concept has been picked up by the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz campaign. So that popular, multi-generational, female-centered support for a particular cultural moment has been transferred into politics. And that looks to me very much like the times we had the rise of new politics in America. And I think if you look at the musicians that are turning out for the Harris-Walz campaign, if you look at the different artists that are turning out, you are seeing not only a shared experience that contrasts pretty dramatically with the people who are turning out to support the other candidate, you are also seeing what looks to be this new, a new kind of approach to a shared moment. Different ages, different genders, different races, different ethnicities, different religions. It's really interesting.
Total change of gears. We talked about this a little bit in the reception beforehand, the Electoral College. What are we supposed to do with that? And is it time to actually launch a movement to get rid of it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there have been movements before, but so my complaint about there's a lot of complaints about the Electoral College, but my complaint about the Electoral College is freaking Thomas Jefferson,
Freaking.
It was
That and Taylor Swift in the same show, ladies and gentlemen.
It was never supposed to be winner take all. Thomas Jefferson realized in 1800 that he would have won in 1896 if Virginia had gone winner take all. So he talks to the Virginia legislature. James Monroe, by the way, is the governor of Virginia right then. Anyway, they
Wait, what? What does that mean?
like, come on,
All right, sorry, never mind. Go ahead.
They just so rigged it, and we're still suffering from it. So he got Virginia to do winner take all so that he was elected in 1800. Every other state said, crap, if they're going to do it, we better do it too. Massachusetts is one of the next in line. They go winner take all. We get this winner take all system that completely perverts everything because no longer do you have to compete in all the states. And James Madison goes, oh my God, we can't do this. So he says we got to amend the Constitution in 1823. Then there's a crisis in 1824, so it doesn't happen. But then in addition to that problem, we get the capping of the House of Representatives in 1929, which is a real blow to the larger states so that they're underrepresented. And we could fix any one of those things without taking on we need to get rid of the Electoral College. But we do need to get rid of the Electoral College.
I want to take some questions from the audience, and just remember, y'all can go to slido.com, enter the code podcast to enter your own questions.
Can I ask a question of you two?
Sure.
Totally.
So, I'm always talking about how the Republicans have this myth that they are
Better
good
for
with the economy.
Stop.
Yeah, I mean, Walk me through that one.
Ooh.
And how do
what
we
is
combat
better
that?
for the economy? What does that mean? Better for who in the economy?
Oh, do you think that's it?
Yeah. Better for donors? Sure. Better for the people who pull the political levers in power and in politics. Better for the people who often own businesses and who are the most active in lobbying. A lot of like trade associations, things like doctors, lawyers, things like that. They actively write policies that are better for those people and their personal economies. If you're poor, maybe not. But the economy for whom?
Stock market, tax breaks. It's, I mean, you know,
So
why.
it really
GDP, though. GDP, growth, that's lower under Republicans.
Do you think that that is an accurate measure of how well the economy is doing?
look,
Well, this is your
no, but here's the bottom line, right? And I say this on the program all the time. Economic headlines are all well and good, but they don't matter unless you're feeling it in your day to day. So the GDP right now is 3 plus or minus %, according to the Atlanta Fed, right? But if you are trying to work, if you have to work 3 jobs in Ottumwa, Iowa, right? If groceries now still, even though wages have increased faster than inflation in the last 18 months, if groceries still cost you twice as much as they did 4 years ago, then the economy sucks.
If childcare is unaffordable.
Do you think this is why the media did not cover this economy as being powerful? Because the people who, we know that the people who did not do well in the Biden-Harris economy were those very people you're talking about who were at the top of the economic scale.
So I will speak as the media here, as a reporter who was actively out covering this story. I did a whole series from Marketplace on economic beliefs versus reality and why the top line data was showing that the economy was doing well while people felt like shit about it. And it was because they were experiencing it poorly. And they felt like, and I talked to dozens and dozens of people, probably hundreds by the time the series was over, about the economy. They felt like we were gaslighting them when we told them that the economy was doing well because they still couldn't afford childcare. They still saw their home insurance premiums going up so much that housing became unaffordable. They still felt there's like, and I'm sure you know about this, there's research showing that when people see inflation and costs going up for their regular goods and services, they blame the government and the economy, but when their wages go up, they think they did a good job, as opposed to like broader economic trends, which like, look, I'm guilty of that too. I'm like, yeah, I'm such a great journalist. That's why I got a raise, as opposed to, there's competitiveness in the market or whatever. And so I do think it became very hard for journalists to say, oh, it's a great economy, whenever you would go out in the street and talk to people, what they were feeling was something different. And we already have such a crisis of relevance with like regular folk. And this idea of like the media elite being so out of touch with reality. So if we go on national radio and Kai's show has a bigger audience than the Wall Street Journal, than any other business and economic show, if he goes on national radio and says everything's great in the economy, people are going to think not just that he's out of touch, they're going to think he's wrong, right? And that further undermines trust, which is all we have to go on. So
I have nothing to add.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
I do rants occasionally too. All right, I do want to get to some audience questions. All right, so I know Kai and I both have strong feelings about this. Are polls worth paying attention to?
Nope. Next question.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give you the history of polling if you want.
Yes,
But it's,
we love history.
well, it just, the real political polls that we have now come out of World War II with a focus on statistics and on math and the idea that you can put together your numbers in such a way that it can give you really good snapshots of the way people are thinking. But, that all goes to hell in a handbasket in 1948 with the Dewey-Truman election. And what we ended up with by 1960 was this idea that that political campaigns should go on forever, and that the campaigns would adjust according to the polls. And, that you can sort of see that going out through the Carter administration in the 70s when he was, people made fun of him for focusing so much on polls. But where we are now is back to your disinformation, where people are flooding the polls with disinformation to convince people to lose heart in this election and not to show up. And not to keep. In this, we know that the right-wing pollsters are flooding the polls.
Okay.
And the Democrats are not doing that. And if you get confused and concerned, there is somebody I follow, Tom Bonnier, who deconstructs what is in the polls and says, well, let's take a look at their sampling. Oh, look, and I'm making these numbers up.
I should say that he works with Target Smart, which is a Democratic-leaning organization, but I've found his data to be quite good as well.
Right. You notice the other person like that I didn't mention for that reason.
Yes.
But he will say, look, they've got 95% of women from 18 to 35 voting for a Republican. We don't think that looks right, which I find really helpful.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about Abraham Lincoln for a second?
Sure, he's my man.
I know.
So much.
I know. I saw that in the book. I spent part of the weekend last weekend in Sonoma County at the Santa Rosa Symphony.
Did you have any wine?
No, I was working actually. A buddy of mine runs a
You
Santa
guys are working tonight.
It's a whole different thing. A buddy of mine runs the Santa Rosa Symphony, and they did Lincoln Portrait, and I was the narrator. And if you haven't ever heard Lincoln Portrait, you should. Aaron Copland, 1942, great piece of music. And you quote one of the, so it's Aaron Copland, it's a 15-minute orchestral suite. First 8 or so minutes is Copland's music, and then the music comes under a narrator with 5 or 6 stanzas of Lincoln's writings and speeches. And you quote one of them in the book, the one about the eternal struggle between two choices, right and wrong, throughout the world, from the Lincoln-Douglas debate in 1858. The one I think is more relevant, though, is the first one in that symphony, which is his 1862 message to Congress, in which he says, we of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance will save one or another of us. And then here's the nut graph. The fiery trial through which we pass, which of course in 1862 was a civil war, but today is 2024. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. And I guess my question is, why don't people recognize that they're on the wrong side of history?
I think it goes back to how you define the economy, but how you define what is the right side of history. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to, can we swear on the show?
Yes, we can.
Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to be an asshole. They wake up and they say, today I'm going to protect my children from the bad guys coming across the border. Today I'm going to make sure my child has whatever. Today I'm going to make America great again. I think it has to do with the way we conceive of our role in society. And one of the things that I think we all do is try to make sure that people's impressions of who they are and how they fit into that world are based in reality. And that's why what we do is so important. I think that keeping a record of who the good guys actually are. The Nazis are not the good guys.
Nazis are never the good guys.
Isn't it wild that we have to say that out loud?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, and yet, take somebody like J.D. Vance. He, of course, came out today, I think it was today, when he talked about how, Ukraine wasn't necessarily the good guy, and Russia wasn't necessarily the bad guy. He knows that Russia invaded Ukraine.
Right,
There's no doubt about that.
Sorry, so look, so the ancillary question is, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but explain to me the failure of leadership from people who know better.
And can I pause here for a moment because of what was it, last year? No, it was again, time has no meaning. I think it was 2021, 2022, we were on the show and you said, we just need these leaders in the Republican Party to come out and say out loud.
Oh, I said this?
Yes,
Oh.
you said this. That Trump
Sorry.
lost the election. We need them to stand up and say that this is wrong, that Trump lost the election, that this is all whatever. And I challenged you at the time. I said, who specifically? And you gave like a whole list of Republican leaders. And most of them have since come out and said these things.
Yeah.
And it hasn't mattered.
Said these things that he lost the election.
Yeah, that he lost the election, that, they believe in the right to a free and fair election, all these things. It hasn't mattered to the people who still believe everything that Trump says.
Nope. But it has mattered to a lot of us who care about democracy.
Yeah.
So remember
Isn't it too
this. No, it is not too late. No.
Too late for them, though.
Oh, too late for them. Well, yeah. So think about any.
Thanks for coming to our TED Talk.
Any reactionary right-wing movement has a ceiling of about 33%. And those people between 20 and 27, 33%, you are not going to change their opinions. You're just not. They have drunk the Kool-Aid.
Okay, but wait, you saw the Times poll today, 49-40 or 48-48.
Of
just said
Siena
we-
poll of likely voters, right?
We just said we weren't supposed to pay attention to
Oh,
yeah, I was going to go there,
sorry,
but
sorry.
So forget
Well,
the
she
polls.
came with the statistics. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but that's like a
right,
that's
okay,
political
all right,
science.
all right.
That's going to be your ceiling.
Oh, that's
So that's political science.
Okay,
That's right.
All right.
Okay, wait. I really
so-
do finish that, and then I want to get to another question.
Okay,
But-
so now I've forgotten the question. The question was why is that enough?
Right.
Not enough. Because we get the leaders we deserve. And because a lot of people were asleep at the switch for far too long, and they permitted people like Mitch McConnell to pervert our democracy almost beyond saving, almost being the operative words. And one of the things that we are seeing going on now is a whole bunch of people who didn't pay attention for a very long time waking up and saying, this is not what I was signing up for when I signed up for a democracy, and I'm going to put my all into it, and I'm going to take this country back. And I believe that we are in the process of doing so.
Well, this is very relevant to.
Round
of applause.
That's where we ought to end.
This is relevant to one of the questions that we got from the audience. Is this election moment really as big as people make it out to be, or is it American hyperbole?
No. This is it. This is, a friend of mine's in politics, and he always looks to get money, and he always says, I always tell you every election's the most important one, but this one really is. And I always counter with, every election before this could have been the most important, and we didn't take care of what we needed to take care of in those elections. But let's be really clear. Donald Trump is a fascist. He has embraced fascist ideas. He has promised to come after the people he perceives as his political enemies, including journalists, including people who are election observers, including politicians, some of whom he has named. He's talked about taking the control of the civil service into his own hands, the military, our Justice Department, and enforcing his own will. This has never happened before for a leader of an American political party to be this close to the presidency and to openly talk of overthrowing democracy, as does his running mate, J.D. Vance. We have never been here before, and we must not let them win this election. That does not mean that it's over on November 10th or whenever we actually get the answers. It's going to be a while to rebuild the country. But yeah, this is it. This is the whole kettle of fish. And one of the reasons you're seeing the kinds of threats you saw today from Trump, and the polls being flooded, and the disinformation, and Musk with his stupid little dance and his lottery and all that, is because they recognize that this is it for them as well. Because if they do not get control of the United States government in this election, it will not be in their lifetimes or their grandchildren's or great-grandchildren's that they have an opportunity to get it again.
Yes, and amen. We will end, because Heather's got to get out of here, with the Make Me Smart question, which is, for those of you who listen all the time, what is something you thought you knew, but later found out you were wrong about.
Oh, this is so bad because this is, okay, this is really, they told me they were going to ask me this question, and there's so many huge things. All right, I'll be honest. I was like 57 years old when I learned that hummingbirds had feet.
Shut up.
I've never told that in public. They just like flap. I thought they like flap.
Do they like never land? Is that what you thought?
I thought they just landed in the nest.
And the nice little bird feeders, they just float like that.
Oh, my
but
God.
Minus the feet.
So it turns out they do have feet.
How
But
did you find that out?
Well, actually, at the time I was dating my now husband, and I mentioned something about it, and he looked at me and he's like, "You don't think hummingbirds have feet?" And I was like, "Well, no, I've never seen them." And he's like, "Heather, all birds have feet."
Oh, my God.
I'm so sorry. I know that was supposed to be the last question. We have to let you go. But given what you just said, what happens or what do we do if Trump wins?
Well, first of all, we don't let that happen. But if he does win, I think we continue to fight for the cause that we believe in. And we continue to keep trying every day to do the right thing. And what I mean by that is I firmly believe that just like nobody wakes up and says, today I'm going to be an asshole, nobody wakes up and says, today I'm going to be wakes up and says, today I'm going to be a hero. You wake up and you just put one foot in front of the other and you try to do the next right thing. Mm-hmm. And if enough of us wake up and do the next right thing for long enough, we turn it around.
We're done.
Professor Heather Cox Richardson, thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather.
Really appreciate you. Thank you. Yeah,
We'll get you out of here.
Thank you so much. Everybody, isn't she amazing? National treasure.
I don't know if you heard her, but she said I got to go right.
Yeah, she's got to go right.
So
her
that all
newsletter.
y'all have something in your mailboxes tomorrow morning. She's working pretty hard.
It's unbelievable how much she writes. She was telling us before the show that she's been doing this pretty much every day since
5
like
years.
2019.
2019. Yeah.
Which
So,
I,
if you don't subscribe, you should.
we talk a lot about, kind of how you maintain your mental health and your ability to keep doing it. I have a very good friend who I've known since middle school. She's back in Missouri. We talk almost every day. And she often asks me, when I get overwhelmed by this, I just turn it off. What do you do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, cocktails? And also meditation and sleep and baths with bath bombs, all that stuff. But I can't imagine just writing
Cranking it out.
much and cranking it out all the time.
Out of time.
But also another thing that we do to kind of function in the midst of everything is our Make Me Smiles.
So we will do that.
Because there wouldn't be a Make Me Smart episode without the Make Me Smile, right?
That's right. We will do that.
All right, what do you have, Kai?
Okay, so there was either yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a rally in Atlanta. Obama was there. Harris was there. Tyler Perry was there. And he gave an absolutely amazeballs speech, of which I will play 25 seconds right here.
You want to hear something about an American dream? Fort McPherson was once a Confederate Army base, where there were Confederate soldiers trying to plot and plan on how to keep 3.9 million Negroes enslaved. Now that land is owned by me.
If he had had a microphone, he would have dropped it. I commend that speech to your attention. It was as, this is no small praise, it was as good as anything Obama did. Truly it was. That's what I got. What do you got?
I have a story that I found on WBUR.org, which I would highly recommend everybody go to. So Kai is not on the same page as me with this, but I love Halloween.
You make me out to be like the bad guy. What?
I make you out to be the boring guy. But with love.
Ouch.
But with love. You don't like Halloween. You don't dress up. You don't do costumes.
It's the
you don't,
worst holiday.
It is not the worst holiday. It is one of the greatest holidays. And WBUR did a story for Radio Boston on last-minute Boston-themed Halloween costumes. I would love to hear your guesses as to what they are.
Something about the Red Sox. Sorry. Margaret, I'm sorry.
There was definitely Duncan represented in the list. Okay, I'm going to read through. Ready? Left guy at the Silhouette Lounge.
All y'all ought to be ashamed of yourself. I don't even know what's going on.
No, so this is basically a sign where there are supposed to be like two people on the sign, but one of them has fallen off. And so the one that's missing is like the idea for the Halloween costume. Okay, and this one I relate to deeply from my time living in Boston, a Storo truck.
Wow.
So, do you know about this? Okay,
Yeah.
So there is a road in Boston called Storo Drive, and every year, without fail, college students trying to move to one of the many universities in this wonderful town do not recognize that there is not enough clearance in the overpass for their U-Haul or whatever moving trucks, and they hit the bottom of this overpass. And so someone is recommending making their costume basically a smooshed up can on the top of their head.
Unbelievable.
A milk crate used to save a space. So one of my classic Boston stories is when I used to work at the State House News Service in Boston on Beacon Hill. Sometimes I had to work late. And one time there was a snowstorm and I had to work late and I took the bus home. And I run out of the State House and I see the bus driving away in this snowstorm. But I knew if I could make it across Boston Common fast enough, I could get the bus on the other side. So I'm booking it through the snow to try to catch the bus on the other side. And sure enough, it turns the corner and I'm running and I'm like banging on the side of the bus in the snow. And I fall into a snowdrift.
Oh, and you land? Oh, did you land?
And they didn't see me because I fell into the snowdrift. And so I'm lying there in a snowdrift on the side of Boston Common. And I was like, this is my life. And then there was a merciful taxi driver with chains on his tire that came by just around that time, and I was able to not have to walk home. So I relate deeply to the milk crate space saver in the snowstorm. But anyway, I love Halloween. My Halloween costume this year is probably going to be some anime character because I am me. But I'm curious, what anybody else dressing up for Halloween?
Sorry, just kidding. I will be me. That's just the way I go.
Who's dressing up for Halloween this year?
My people. My people.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so I'm the outlier.
We're out.
All right.
We're done.
all
That is
right,
a
all
wrap
right.
for Make Me Smart Live in Boston. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, today's live edition of Make Me Smart was produced by the Make Me Smart crew, WBUR's event team, and the fine folks here at CitySpace, including Amy McDonald, Candace Springer, Stephen Davey, Avi Wynn, Jules Waklowick, I'm going to get that right, and Taylor Bettison.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. This was a great time. I hope you had fun.